let's talk about What a Way to Go from 1964, starring Shirley MacLaine in a dark comedy about a woman whose husbands always die once they become wealthy. Among her husbands are famous names such as Dick Van Dyke, Paul Newman, Gene Kelly, Robert Mitchum. It's really just an excuse to see her in fabulous gowns with each husband, gowns by Edith Head, and it's not meant to be all that deep, just having fun. Well, she starts off single, living with her mother, who is obsessed with money. So she tells her daughter, you've got to go marry a rich guy, a specific rich guy. And she's like, I don't love him. It doesn't matter. That man has money. You go and get it. And the man is Dean Martin. And he's an arrogant person, so she doesn't like him. And she decides, okay, well, I'm trying to get away from him, and the way to do that is to marry Dick Van Dyke, who is a simple guy who lives a simple life with a little cottage on the lake, which is actually prime real estate, but they do nothing. And that's what she loves. She loves to do nothing. So she likens their marriage to a silent film. And that's when the film goes from color to black and white. And they sort of pay homage to silent film stars like Buster Keaton. And of course, it's Dick Van Dyke at his sinewy best. So the big rich guy comes in to taunt them and their simple life, which makes Dick Van Dyke mad. He goes to work in his store and then becomes obsessed with money. And of course, the movie kills him off because obsessed people tend to die. Being a widow, she just goes to Paris to get away from it all, where she meets a taxi driver who's only a taxi driver for the day as a favor for a friend. He's actually an artist. And she falls in love with him because he has a simple life of a bohemian in Paris where his friends paint with guns. And it's just this odd, quirky, little weird life. But it's a simple life in a different way. So, of course, she falls in love with him and his simple baguettes and things. But at some point, of course, he becomes ambitious and he thinks, maybe my paints could sell. Maybe I could sell something. That's when he becomes rich, doesn't really pay much attention to her, just like her first husband did. She becomes a kind of canvas. Her gowns become pieces of art for his expression, his self-expression. And of course, she's lonely and tries to go to look, I did it by myself. And he's like, look, I have to paint. He dies from being hit by his own paint machines in his wild frenzy. And she is again on her own, widowed. On her way back to the United States, she meets Robert Mitchum, who is already wealthy, and she's like, okay, he's rich already. I can't possibly kill him. So they go on his private jet that's the size of an apartment, and suddenly she wants to marry this guy. She likens their marriage to a big budget movie where everybody talks about how much they love each other all the time. But it's really an excuse for him to escort her to different parties and scenes. And every jump cut, she's in a different outfit. So it's a fun little montage of just excess and consumption. But for some reason, he's not dead. After a while, though, even he is discontent. And he's like, you know what? I've always wanted a simple life. So they chuck everything and go to a farm where he gets kicked by a bull. And she is widowed again. Traveling to nowhere, she just sort of stops into a cafe where she meets Pinky, played by Gene Kelly, who's a hoofer who doesn't do very well. So, of course, she finds him extremely attractive and thinking, oh, I can live a simple life with this guy. We'll always have nothing. And so they decide, she decides, this is like a musical with this man. And, of course, they have a musical montage, which is fun. But inevitably, he becomes rich and he becomes arrogant, and she is suddenly wearing pink because his name is Pinky and he needs his ego displayed everywhere, including I guess, demanding that she dye her hair pink. She's wearing pink from head to toe. It's a whole thing. He dies being trampled by his fans in a scene not unlike that in Singing in the Rain. She was never comfortable with this lifestyle anyway. Just like, oh, the fans and the crowds. It's just not her thing. So he's died, and she is widowed again in her sad little person in her pink palace. And we're back to the therapist, which I didn't mention before. But she's saying all of this. This is a whole a flashback because she's talking to her therapist like, what's wrong with me? I always make my men rich and then they die. And then suddenly he's proposing to her. Her therapist is proposing to her in a violation of everything that's good and right in the therapy world. She's like, but I can't marry you. You'll die. And he's like, I don't care. I just want the money. So it's funny. She doesn't marry him because she runs into the first rich guy, the first guy she dated, the Dean Martin character, but for some reason he's not rich anymore. I think her first husband put him out of business. I can't remember. But yeah, so he's living a simple life now, and she's like, oh, you're attractive. So I guess the fact that he was arrogant and off-putting and possibly a predator wasn't a problem. It was just the wealth. So they live happily ever after in their little cottage, and she's back to the gingham tablecloths and the plaid and all of that. And she's very happy. They suggest that this is the last husband, but really, is he? I don't think so. What a Way to Go is just an excuse to watch Shirley MacLaine go around in beautiful gowns and to see famous men and, wonder who's coming next. Well, now that I've told you who's coming next, it's no surprise. But, yeah, it's just a fun little romp, eye candy, with famous and familiar faces. Not a bad movie.